So again, some introduction. I wear several hats. I'm actually in Hong Kong, being a e-learning technologist. In IEEE, I also have some positions. So associate editor for the TLT. So one of the e-learning journals. And also for the coming year will be the Region 10, which is the Asia Pacific region educational activity committee chair for starting from next year. And also Cindy is also a colleague, and I'm also a advanced HE senior fellow, so we'll apply principal fellow soon. So that's the background. We will talk about we will give around 30 minutes sharing on the webinar on overall landscape related to e-learning. By the way, so today's workshop will be, and also training will be in English. So because I noticed that there should be some colleagues who are not from local, so we will use English for today's sharing and workshop. So we will talk about we will spend around 30 minutes to talk about the webinar, and then overall landscape. And then, of course, we also provide hands-on practice for all of you. So we will separate into two groups, and then with Cindy and me, so to do the chatbot development. So you will get into the system to develop something. So no programming skills needed actually, so it should be okay. And also debriefing at the end, so have some sharing in a small group, and then to have some discussions, etc. So I believe some of you may have some questions on for whether AI can be used for assessment, how useful it is. If AI will be introduced in the future, will it there will be no more teachers, no more professors in the future, whether we will be replaced by AI, etc. So can we use AI in small scale or just in a class level, or have to be used or can it be used in a whole university level? So and also, can teachers and students understand insights from AI? Because some of us may understand that, is it require lots of digital literacy or program literacy to understand AI insights? So I hope actually at least for this short sharing, we can provide some insights to you, and then during the workshop, you also taste it and also have some ideas and feedback and sharing with us at the end. Before talking about AI, I want to show one image or figure on data visualization first. So visualization is for human interpretation, and AI is using the data instead of human to interpret, is giving machine to interpret. So maybe we can start from human interpretation first. So this is a YouTube insight, so showing a video. So so how many or how much proportion of the audience watch the video at that certain moment. And here shows an example of an educational video. So here showing at the beginning, all audience start to watch the video. That's trivial. But of course, they are starting from the first second. There will be around 30% students drop. So and then at the end, but they start to pick it up until this moment, and they drop again, and then we have a sharp hit. And then we can give some. We can have some insights. For example, the first part is about explanation of the techniques. This certain moment is about, we need to, for this question, we need to calculate C1, C2, A, and B. And then the rest of the steps is about the steps for calculation. And then this certain moment is about the answer. So you can see how students browse the video. I believe all of us right now will go back to for physical lectures. But in the previous academics, I think all of us will teach online, and you can actually draw some insights from these kind of things. What I can interpret is whether we need, if there are some missing tips or points that haven't been addressed by or watched by the students, we have to teach them again, and we have to see for computing steps whether we need to speed it up, or we should just keep it, and should we move the conclusion to before showing the answers, so such that the students will not drop the video. So these are some very simple interpretations. I believe all teachers able to make some interpretations. Of course, one point is if the retention here is more than 100%, that means every student watch that moment more than once. So that's the problem. and that means as students can't understand, they have to rewatch. So these are some moments that you need to be aware of. So this is the insights we can get from those visualizations. And of course, the next step is whether instead of human to making the interpretations, it can machine be the one to make the interpretations and give interventions immediately. So that's the sharing for this website, for this 30 minutes sharing. So let's talk about what AI can do. So this is a literature review 209 before pandemic. I believe after the pandemic, actually everything changed. But here shows the results from 2019. There are several applications, or at least from a research perspective. So prediction, so the most classic applications of AI try to predict something based on previous results. Of course, we can provide some insights, just what I shown to you, but machine can do the interpretations. So provide the insights, predict the dropout rates, retention, and engagement. I think for US, they will be it's more important because they have a high retention dropout rate. But for Hong Kong, most of the learners can finish the degree. So that's why degree retention is not that important in Hong Kong. But you may still want to make some engagement or predict the scores to find out who will fail the course, etc. And we can be used for curriculum level, course level, videos level. So different researchers try different kind of predictions, and then using different kinds of machine learning. So neural network, SVM, etc. Deep learning. Lots of researchers use these different kinds of algorithms to do the prediction. So also well studied in the literature. So this is because it is the most classic application. So let me change to the full. By the way, let me change to full screen first. Okay. And the second one is about the adaptive system. So yes, adaptive systems. So talking about not just prediction of whether this student will fail the course or etc. It's also more on giving some suggestions to them. So recommend some contents based on their previous record, or based on their existing assessments, etc. Provide personalized results, content for them. Just like YouTube, yes. Or after you watching the first video, based on the previous track record, YouTube can suggest you another video or TED Talk, etc. So this is a recommendation. Again, also a classic application in AI. So to guide students to do something next. So if they instead of because teachers may not be able to provide dedicated support for every students at midnight or 24/7. So these kind of systems, AI system can help to provide some personalized adaptation. And similar things happens for the intelligent tutor system. So again, responding to students' feedback. So to understand what's asking students to answer questions or answering students' questions. So students type the questions and then the system can respond immediately, and etc. etc. And of course, we will talk more about this intelligent tutoring system in the chatbot tutor later on, the next part. So and then assessment and evaluation. So mostly through the natural language processing or text mining or the text word processing or computational linguistics. So they are not the same thing, but they are related to each other. But for typical or for layman, assessment and evaluation is more on the essay grading or marking. So there are again lots of studies on creating essay marking engine. For example, here show some of the. I will show some results. And whether some teachers may want to ask whether there are some mature marking systems. Is actually somehow partially yes. If you are talking about a specific topic, so actually the automated essay marking system is okay. I can show you some examples later. And then so for assessing the content is actually case specific. But if you change the topic, essay topics, it will be very difficult for the marking. But if you're just talking about language, writing, or organizations, all those things, And then this kind of essay marking systems actually can help to do assessing. And then, of course, providing feedback before the submission. This is even more important, so in my opinion. So because for teachers, we may be able to mark the final essay, the final copy. But if students want to have continuous feedback or comments before the final submission, so most of the time, teachers may not be able to support all students. So that's why this kind of grading or evaluation system is not for final scores, it's for providing feedback during the writing process. So if we use if you use it for this kind of intermediate evaluation or feedback, it will be very helpful. So maybe I will show you some examples later on. So on these four kinds of applications. So of course, besides all those four major applications, so let's talk about some other adoption. So this is from Holland IQ, one of the educational consultant firm. So proposed again in 2009 before pandemic. Again, things changed a lot after the pandemic. But here shows the AI adoption in different kinds of applications. You can see the pre-K is the least adopt. So it's normal. It's trivial. First of all, it's difficult to collect baby's data. So we have lots of consent to go for. And then second, when the children or baby cry, you don't know what he or she is thinking. So the interpretation even by human is difficult. So making machines will be even more difficult to make the judgment. So the pre-K is difficult, but you can see there are some dark colors. That means it has been widely adopted. For example, assessment. For example, language learning. So these are large-scale applications. For example, for English learning, there are lots of AI systems already. And also language tests, etc. So because if you're talking about English learning, you're talking about millions, billions of learners. And of course, there are also some other situations, robotics, games, etc. Because they are originally e-learning system already or e-system already. Collecting data for analysis is not that difficult. So you can see this is a overall adoption, the overall landscape of the adoption of AI. So things change a lot, of course, and keep changing. PK, and for university, they are still start to use it, etc. Okay, so after talking about the landscape, let's talk about applications. For typical teachers, for most of the teachers, what we want is products rather than frontier research. For products, there are also some existing commercial products. For example, if we are referring to predictions, so this is the group, and then using based on your existing learning records, they can suggest you some other learning materials and questions. So this is one of them. You can check the videos for informations. And for natural language processing, so I believe some of us may know about the Grammarly. Of course, it's a kind of profiling feedback system. So suggesting how should we revise or update the writing, or spelling mistake, language writing, language correction, tone correction, etc. So Grammarly. So I believe some students and even some of us use it before. Another one is actually from Turnitin. I'm not sure if Xi'an University is using Turnitin for the plagiarism detection. So for Turnitin, they also have different kinds of marking softwares. So one of them is the revision assistant focused on essay commenting. So instead of talking through a static image, so let me show you a demo here. So this is the Turnitin revision assistants. And you can see when you get into these systems, they will show the students have to import their writing. So that's the prompt, the question, and then the pre-writing, asking students to write something to build up the structure of the essay. So pre-writing process, and then they will and then ask the students to submit the draft, as they call signal check, to do the detection or clarification. Of course, the system will provide whether the draft is too short, so ask them to do something more. If it's not enough, they will start the analysis. You can see the writing here. They will give you some organization or writing recommendations, whether you have a correct or appropriate organization, language skills, the evidence is support enough, or the claim is clear enough or not. So we'll have these kinds of information and providing some recommendations. So talking about recommendations, what kind of struggles, and then how to update and revise, etc. Yes, and then here shows the proofread mode, and then you can see they can keep updating. And then the Turnitin, what they mentioned is they want students to keep improving the writing, so such that the scores increase after the feedback process. So students receive the feedback and then rewrite and then feed into Turnitin again, and then in order to have a higher score. Now, of course, you can see these are not related to content. They are all related to language writing only. So this is the Turnitin revision assistance. I think that's all for the explanation for Turnitin. So let me go back to the slides. So let me go back to full screen. Okay. So this kind of tools you can actually use it. And for I noticed that for Turnitin, I mean revision assistant, they have been adopted in US K-12 schools already. I know that in Hong Kong, there are some similar systems developed by Hong Kong startups and also has been used in K-12 schools in Hong Kong, also high schools. So you can search around if you need it, or if you adopt it, you can contact Turnitin for some advice, the course, etc. And then another one also from Turnitin. So it's actually using image processing to group similar answers together. So for Turnitin, they have another software called Grayscope, a very small one. So instead of essay marking, they try to tackle STEM question marking. And of course, the system cannot interpret or understand the drawings or chemical equations or graphs, etc. So because they have too many variations, but they can try to group similar answers together, and then let the teacher to do the grouping, the marking just by batch by batch. So instead of marking 200 assignments, you just need to mark five samples, and each sample corresponds to a certain answer or type of answers, etc. So they use the image processing for grouping of answers. And you can see this is a very simple example. So if the answers, the students write 20 here, you can see there are around 11 of them marked 20 here. And you can see there are 4 of them marked 80 here. So instead of marking 15 answers, you have to just need to mark 2. So this can speed up the evaluation process. So this is a great scope. Turnitin, they have quite different softwares on provide different kind of surface on the feedback and assessment. Okay, so I can spend some time, a few more minutes on Chatbot, a overall introduction. So on AI Chatbot introduction before going to the workshops later on. So a quick demo. So here shows the Chatbot tutor. So around 1 minute. So let me share with you the video.
Ever feels like there is not much chance for interactions in class? Or ever wanting to get instant responses when professors or tutors are not available? With Chatbot tutors containing data with a wide range of possible questions and answers, the above situations would be improved. Chatbot tutor acts as a medium linking teachers and students through natural and educational conversations. Teachers would only need to focus on the conversation design, but not the technical aspect. Now, students can receive instant responses for their questions anytime, anywhere. The responses would be personalized, exactly what the students need. Lessons could be engaging even with a large group of students. Tasks like answering commonly asked questions, carrying out interactive activities and evaluating students' performance could now be done by chatbot tutors. With easy-to-use development platforms like Dialogflow and Watson, creating a chatbot is not difficult.
So you can see this kind of chatbot tutor is more on providing standardized feedback based on students' inquiries. We will develop a chatbot by yourself. So during today's workshop. Okay, so this is a very traditional chatbot. So we have something extra. So this is the chatbot, but used for inquiry-based learning. So it's much more advanced, and that means the investment will be much more. Yes. So, but I can show you a video to let you know what chatbot can do in TNL. Oh.
The current system is a prototype of a larger game development project in a crime investigation course at university level. The course adopts an inquiry-based learning design, which emphasizes active learning and knowledge construction. The underlying principles are introduced in the lecture series covering crime scene investigation, forensic medicine, forensic psychology, computer forensics, and laboratory science. One of the assessment tasks in the course is a crime investigation project. Through the investigation process, students learn to make good observations, identify and formulate the critical issues in the case by asking the right questions. As our university is moving to a more student-centered learning environment, we partnered with the Technology Enriched Learning Initiative unit on our campus to integrate technology into classroom teaching. In this game, we will be leveraging on a commercial-based chatbot platform to create multiple chatbots that will serve as the different characters in the game. Students will start with the initial police report and they will attend the scene and meet the first responders, who are represented by chatbots. In every stage, they will discover new leads, new parts of the map, and other evidence that will help them in their investigation. At the end of each stage, the students will go through an intensive briefing where the superintendent chatbot will ask them a series of questions to verify their findings and to elicit further hypotheses that will then lead to further investigative actions.
So you can see this is one of the chatbot development. So on the inquiry-based learning, so those chatbot pretend as the witness in the crime scene, and then you can students can use the mobile phone and then to communicate with them. So this is another way using chatbot. So not just for administration, but act as a actor or role-playing purpose. So there are also some different opportunities and challenges using chatbots. Actually, Professor Huang from Taiwan so also did a review in 2021. So try to find out how it has been used or it can be used. You can see Professor Huang mentioned, so it can be used in language, engineering, and computers. Try to have the productive talk, just like the witness-student conversation, to have the productive talk between students and chatbot. Learn about the communication skills, etc. Though in particular, he mentioned the learning communication skills example. So to learn how to communicate. And then the second aspect is actually guide learning. So giving instructions, so through scaffolding and then giving instructions to students and to guide them to learn. And also do some of these two will be more on the evaluations. So try to forecast their competencies. And since it's communication, students can communicate with bots, so they are more interested to raise questions. So for the previous example, so I remember if students just ask if they don't use, teachers don't use a chatbot, the students just raised a few questions. But through the bot, I remember the students raised more than 20 questions in the chatbot. So asking these and that, etc. So again, because you are not communicating with your teachers, right? So it's just a bot. So that's why they are more interested to raise questions. and then keep the conversation. And also the feedback is much faster. So when we communicate with teachers, maybe the feedback will have to be, for example, 20 minutes or even 1 day later. But for bot, it will be just 1 or 2 seconds. So which stimulates students keep asking questions. So this is some opportunities. Of course, so this is just an example on bots, because why I picked this one, because chatbot become more and more popular. So I will run a conference next week, and around within 120 papers, around 5 to 6 of them are about chatbot. So 120 papers about all kinds of learning technologies. 5 to 6 of them are about chatbot. So here shows, so that's why they are keep, and they keep having more and more papers every year. So you can think about, and it's easy to develop. You will have the experience later on to develop your own bot. But of course, I go back to a more high level perspective. So is the AI a silver bullet for teaching and learning? Can AI replace teachers anyway? So in the future, it's not actually. So in my opinion, so of course, because AI depends on data, so existing data. So existing data is most of the time not structured. It has to be labeled or coded by human first. So and then of course, AI can do the automation, provide automated feedback and response to students anytime, anywhere, etc. But most of the time, the intervention is limited. More important is when teachers collect or receive the insights, so they can provide the intervention. So teachers plays an important role to leverage on the AI for giving the leverage on the AI to amplify the teaching and learning. So that's more important. So AI is not a silver bullet, but it's a good tool for us to leverage on. Before the end of the today's sharing, I would like to share 2 things. So we in the previous slides, we talked about how we can use AI, for TNL. My second question will be, or part of a few slides about when AI has been introduced. So not just for TNL. So right now we have AI. When students can use AI, so what will be the difference? So do we need to teach, for example, do we need to teach students to work with AI together, so such that they can do something more? So here shows an example. So this is a figure created by me. So actually it's by Midjourney, so AI generated drawing engine. And then what I want to describe in this figure is actually about SDG 4, so quality education. And by giving some parameters and descriptions, the computer or the AI system can help me to generate this figure. So I can share you some more figures. So this is on somehow like library, and I can have some more. So you can see, I also for every SDG, I try to create some AI generated figures, and you can see the machine can actually create something which can be used for visual communications. And then my question for you is whether you can ask students also to create something like this for sharing to others, impacting the community. So so that's something that I would like to think about. So talking about using AIs, helping students to learn how to use AI to impact or influence the community. And then another one is we start to think about whether students will use AI to answer the assignments. So this is one of the article where maybe you can spend 10 seconds to read it first. Okay, so this is a article or a paragraph created by AI. So this is from Guardian. So from Guardian 2022, and they use the generative pre-trained transformer, so GPT-3. So and to create the essay, and they have. So this is just part of the whole article, and you can see if you are talking about sentence level, the AI system can do the work already. If we're talking about paragraph level, sometimes you may discover is the relationship are not logical. The organization is not logical. But if you are sleepy, if the marker or the grader is sleepy, most likely this article is actually okay. So that's why we have to start to think about whether students in the future will create their own system and then generate essays for submitting an assignment. So GPT-3 has been created by 2020. I know right now in 2020, this year, 2 years later, they start to have the GPT-4 already. So that's why the AI essay writing will become more and more mature. That means the article will be more structured, etc. Of course, building this kind of essay writing engine is not that easy. It's talking about 100 billion parameters. So, and then they have all the data from different kinds of websites, Wikipedia, book collections, etc. You can search for it. It's accurate at sentence level, some glitches for paragraph level. Maybe right now 2022 version will be much more complete and mature. The question for teachers, for us, is should we start to think about how to design our essay questions or essay assignment, or should we just instead of writing essays, should we design something else for assessments? So these are something that I want you to think about. Again, so this is a short sharing, so around 30 minutes on AI. So right now I'm also a PI for a UGC project called e-teaching for you. So providing different kinds of trainings for teachers in Hong Kong and beyond Hong Kong. So we talk about AI, we talk about VR, we talk about copyright in Hong Kong U. So that's why that's why we would like you can have a look. And then our part will be the Q&A session when we can have more discussions within the background monitor on. But before going to background room, let me pass the mic to Cindy. She will also share something about the chatbot development first before going to the background room. So let me pass the mic to Cindy.
Hello. Thank you, Liang. Sorry, excuse me, Stella. I think we need to close the breakout room now because I can see some audiences. They just jump into the breakout room. Thank you. Actually, before the hands-on exercise, I would like to share some more. Okay. So thanks to Dr. Lei to introduce about to give us some good examples, good practices of how AI technology can be used for teaching, learning, and even assessment. So specifically, I am going to introduce something about the chatbot. And later, we will have the hands-on exercise to try to develop a code-free chatbot by ourselves. Based regarding those very good practices, we can see the AI technology or the chatbot can do a lot to facilitate TNL. But how about starting from a one-man team so that we can try to build a code-free or low-code chatbot? Okay, so here's the rundown. Here comes our second part of today's sharings. Firstly, I will give a brief introduction about the chatbot, and then we will have hands-on exercise in 2 breakout rooms. Then we will do the debriefing in the breakout room as well. Okay, the objectives. So first thing, we need to think of 2 questions. The first one is, what are the basic structures and processes, or we can say the workflow involved in developing a chatbot? So here I give you 3 terms that we will use later: intents, entities, and responses. And the second question is, how can we design chatbots without a strong technical background? So today's session, we would like to give you some understandings of how we can build the chatbot. And then later, if you have any idea or if you see the potential of building or applying the AI technology, AI chatbot in your classrooms, then this session will help us to better communicate with the programmer or the developers to help build up that chatbot for the T&L purposes. Okay, so what's a chatbot? Although Liang just showed us some very fancy good examples, here I would like to show you a very simple design of the AI chatbot. So now we can see it's a mobile-based chatbot. Okay, so before jumping into the chatbot things, maybe we can identify that this is a conversation between two people, right? Someone is trying to ordering coffee and muffins in Starbucks. So how do chatbot dialogues work? So here I would like to show you a flow. So just think of the conversation I just showed you, and then you might identify there's someone try to type in some input. Basically, that will be some questions, and then there will be output, or we say the responses based on the questions. So in the chatbots, we can identify them as two things: the front end and the back end. So the front end is what you can see, for example, the button and then the interface. So like the one we just seen, that's a mobile-based application. Or we can also see the chatbots being used on web pages or the application mobile apps. And then the back end side, there will be some possible outputs. Let's say the responses based on the database for user inputs. So I think the challenge part for a one-man team to develop a chatbot is we need to have sufficient database for the user inputs. And then we need to design those dialogues in the design platforms to develop a chatbot. And today, in the hands-on part, we will use a chatbot tool called Dialogflow to try to design and develop some dialogues. Okay, and here specifically, I will show you an example to see how do chatbot dialogues work. So like I mentioned, firstly, we will have user input. For example, here I would like to ask about the assignment. So I've typed in the questions, what is the project deadlines? And then the user input will through the system, through the web page, through the dialogue-like conversation chat box. And then the bot will think of 3 steps before answering the user. So step 1 is intent matching. For example, in this situation, I'm asking what is the project deadline, and the bot will firstly recognize what the user wants. So in these situations, we can identify that, okay, the intention is to ask for deadlines. And then step 2, the bot will try to identify things the user mentioned. For example, here, asking for deadlines, but it's what's the deadline? The deadline for what? Okay, so the deadline for the project. And then step 3, the bot will take actions and or respond accordingly. So in this sense, the bot will try to interact with the users. But how to interact with the users? For the actions, okay, the bot might check for the deadlines, especially for the project, not the reading or essay, but the project. And then respond with the answer. It says the deadline is December the 5th. And then if we want the chatbot sounds or looks smarter, then we can add one more sentence to ask the question, to ask the user, say like, anything else you want. So in this sense, the language will be more natural. So after these 3 steps analysis, then the bot we try to answer, we try to respond the user, and then the user can later decide on if he or she will end the conversations or keep the dialogue going to, for example, like ask more questions. Okay, so the chatbot building flow based on the 2 dialogue flow. So firstly, it's all about the design. Before we try to develop the chatbot, I think we need to design the details. We need to design the layout, the interface, the button, the chatbot will be used in those social media platforms or web-based one. So as you can see to the left-hand side, this is a course trial that I created today. If the user try to type in a hi, hello, and the bot will respond to the user. And then to the right-hand side, you can see an Excel table. So this is what I will call it database. So I will try to list out those materials, those possible user input and possible questions. And basically, I will put them into 4 categories: intents, entities, training phrases, and responses. Later, I will share the handout with you, and that's the material that's this is the material that we will use for the hands-on session later. And after designing with with much information, many details, then we will start to develop the bot on the design platform. So here's the interface of the page of dialog flows. So basically, there will be 3 parts, but I show you two sections of the interface here. Later we will we can see more in the hands-on sections. And in this session, because we just want to give you some sense of understanding how we can develop a chatbot in Dialogflow. So we will only focus on intents, entities, and how to share the chatbot through integrations. And then the right-hand side, actually it is the middle part of the Dialogflow page. So this is the design area that we will work on. And then after that, deployment. So, like I mentioned just now, the integrations. Once we go to the integrations, that we can see actually they provide us many choices. For example, the web page based conversation just enabled by the web demo one, but we can also apply the chatbot in different social media tools, for example, Facebook Messenger, Slack, Twitter, Telegram, etc. Okay, the dialogue flow. Before we jump into the hands-on sessions, let's have some sense of the common design language. So I actually mentioned these 3 terms a lot: intents, entity, and responses. But what are these terms? So the intent is a group of examples that describe same user's intentions. For example, in the previous example, I want to ask about the deadlines for the projects. So that's the intent. I'm going to ask for the deadlines. A user might ask the same questions in various ways. So for example, example 1, identifications. I can ask question like, what's your name? Or who are you? So for the deadline, I can ask, when's the deadline, when should I submit, when's the due date. So you can see the users, they might use synonyms to express the same intention: deadline, when submit, due date. And then entities. So for the same entities, basically the questions, users may ask about different details. So the entity represents a specific detail in users' input. For example, the intent is to ask for the deadline, but if it is used for T&L purposes, the deadlines, we might have different deadlines for different assessments. For example, I can ask about the deadline for the reading, the deadline for the essay, or the deadline for the project. So in this one, I can recognize different entities. For example, reading, essay, and project. So same intent, but different entities. And then responses. So the responses refers to how the chatbot replies. So this is what I mentioned previously. We need to have a database of those intents and entities so that the chatbot will know, can recognize, will note how the bot can reply to the user. For example, if the bot recognize intents, the deadline, and entities, essay, then the bot can reply with the deadline for the essay is December the 1st. So in the front end, what we can see is the user input was the deadline for the essay. And then the bot, like after that 3 steps analysis, the recognition, the analyze, right? And then the bot will reply with the answer. The deadline for the essay is December the 1st. Okay, so may I invite Stella to help enable the breakout rooms? So in the breakout rooms, we will build our first dialogue.